Soundstripe. Soundstripe. Soundstripe.
Welcome in, everybody, to NFL Guessing the Lines with Uncle Phil and your host, Matt, myself, for Week 10. We are without Smooth Andy tonight. He is traveling out west, so I'll be taking over his duty of helping Uncle Phil guess the lines, but looking forward to it nonetheless. And once again, thanks, everyone, for joining us this Wednesday night. Uncle Phil, how are you doing tonight?
Good, man. Avoided disaster this weekend. Went 1-1 on my public plays on Sunday. Got my bonus pick, so went 2-1 on my best bets overall. Notebook went 6-7, which not great, but again, considering the favorites went 10-5 this past weekend, I was glad that I avoided disaster because typically when the favorites cover, look, it's a great weekend for the public. I'm always glad for the public to win, but it's just sometimes can be a really bad weekend for me, and I feel fortunate to avoid disaster. Before we kind of get into it, some things that I want to cover. Again, favorites went 10-5 against the spread yesterday or Sunday, including Monday as well. Well, also including Thursday, all of week 9, as a matter of fact. Totals went 8-7 in favor of the unders. So really nothing to take over there. The big story is obviously the favorites. The favorites in the past 4 weeks, the favorites have covered 4 out of the past 5 weeks, and 1 weekend it was tied. So this is a trend that's hard to get in front of. It's tough to. Again, it's a great time for the public, but this is out of the ordinary. You just kind of feel like Vegas is setting everybody up for the slaughter. And, I'm going to continue to do my method. It's why that people who just play blanket underdogs tend to get lit up on weekends like that. For me, I'm a fundamentalist. I look at the lines, see what I like. And try to adjust and try to avoid those pitfalls. Last weekend we did, but hopefully this weekend we can get back on the winning track again. Again, we've got a couple teams coming off a bye this week. We've got San Francisco. They've gotten healthy. Pittsburgh, just when you thought that Russell Wilson was a bad move, everybody was kind of up in arms about it. Turns out it's a good move. George Pickens has been getting the ball with some frequency. He's got multiple TDs, seems to be finally utilized in the right way. I certainly like Justin Fields a lot, but Justin Fields drives the ball more where Russell Wilson floats it more, which enables your long or deep passes, guys, to complete those, and especially works well for George Pickens. He can just kind of run underneath it, which helps out. Pittsburgh got a little better this week, and they got defensive lineman Preston Smith from the Packers, so they got depth there. It's really hard to get 4 edge rushers, and find those people, but they got an extra piece there, so that's really a depth piece for them, but a good piece. Again, they continue to have the most expensive defensive roster in the NFL. Tomlin was not going to go by without adding a piece on the defense. But, the big news for them, again, got Mike Williams, just an incredible big-bodied wide receiver for them, will help them specifically in the red zone. So it should be, that's a good fit for them. So, again, those two teams coming off the byes, big news for San Francisco, of course, for them. They opened their 21-day practice window on Christian McCaffrey. He should play this weekend. Things are trending up. So at least practice today he was. So looks like just a really interesting time, especially for San Francisco. We'll kind of get into the game here in a minute, but looking forward to that as well. But I guess let's get into the games. Let's break them down. We'll try to do our best without Smooth Andy here, and we'll appreciate you stepping in to fill the void tonight.
No worries. Always next man up mentality. Uncle Phil's locked. So first on the line, we're going to go to Thursday Night Football. We got 4-5 Cincinnati heading into Baltimore, which is sitting at 6-3. What are your thoughts on this game, and where do you see the spread and total?
Yeah, look, for me, this is the NFC or the AFC North is the black and blue division, right? This is the black and blue redo. We've already seen this story before. We saw this game, it was like an instant classic that ended tragically for Cincinnati. You kind of look at their season and go, man, it was really would have been nice to have that win. But they got a second chance in it added on this one. Should be just a well of a game, and great that we've got a standalone Thursday night game. There's some injuries that I'll get to in a second. But before we get into it, when I look at this game, I look like, before I break it down and guess the lines, I always like to look at the weather. That plays a big predictive factor to me as well. Weather 65, 18% chance of rain, north wind at 5 miles per hour. So really not a big deal for that. Pretty good for November for Baltimore. My guess on this one is that I've got Baltimore minus 5.5, and I've got a total of 48. What's the actual line on this one?
Well, you nailed the side. It's sitting at 5.5 Baltimore, and as far as the total, it's over 53.
53.
So, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Well, it kind of brings me to this one. I'm wondering if that's a little high, just because obviously some key injuries for this. Wide receiver T. Higgins is doubtful for the game for Cincinnati. Running back Zach Moss, terrible, out for the season due to a neck injury in the previous game. Tight end Isaiah Likely for Baltimore is definitely out for this game. Certainly takes away a threat for them. And Baltimore, their running back Keaton Mitchell's also questionable. Interesting things about these two teams, just that from an against the spread standpoint, Cincinnati's really kind of stepped up the past few weeks. They've covered the spread 3 out of the past 4 weeks. Baltimore against the spread is 6-3 this year. Both teams have gone really toward the over, where Cincinnati's covered 6-3 against the over or the total, and Baltimore also is 7-1-1 over the total as well. So look, everything's pointing to an over game, but you certainly have to weigh these key injuries in this one because those certainly can cut down on some third down conversions and stop the ball from moving and keep punting the ball. So I wouldn't blindly bet that one. Look, when you look at who the teams have beaten so far, Baltimore's got key wins over Dallas, over Buffalo, obviously Cincinnati. We discussed that. a really good team in Washington now, surprisingly. Tampa Bay's also very feisty, and Denver. Cincinnati's only wins so far right now are Carolina, the Giants, Cleveland, and Las Vegas. So not really impressive wins there. Look, for me, the thing that is probably most concerning about Cincinnati right now is Cincinnati. Burrow, when you see him right now, doesn't look happy at all. There's some people that are talking that he feels like he's over the organization. I know he's very loyal to Cincinnati because of his, grew up there. That's, I think that's that. But there's a part of me that thinks that he's done with Cincinnati just by his unhappiness. I don't know if it's coaching staff. Again, Zach Taylor, head coach Cincinnati, continues to make some head scratching moves for me that I just don't really understand. We'll see. They made a little bit of a trade in the at the deadline here. They got running back Khalil Herbert from the Bears, which certainly is a great pickup for them. Certainly needed that depth with only Chase Brown there. So, just kind of a tough deal. Baltimore also made trade the deadline. We already know they got Deontay Johnson from Carolina, but right before the deadline ended, they also picked up Tre'Davious Smith, former Pro Bowl cornerback from the Rams, helped the Rams out. They needed some cap space relief, but Baltimore, of course, needed all the help they can get in the back end. So, be an interesting game. Look, I'm certainly looking forward to watching this one. These Thursday night games don't give a lot of teams. A lot of times, teams they don't give a lot of time for these teams to heal up. But again, at least we have some good teams on there. We don't have the Jets on there, thankfully, and we don't have Houston, who just looked like an abject disaster last week. So should be an exciting game. Certainly a tremendous amount on Cincinnati. Cincinnati just can't afford to lose this. They can't. Matt, what are your thoughts? I mean, you watched Baltimore dismantle Denver last week. Cincinnati pretty much did the same thing with Las Vegas. What were your thoughts on these two teams coming in Thursday night?
Yeah, I mean, for this game, I think it's definitely a must-win game for Cincinnati if they want to make the playoffs. So,
Yep.
As a viewer, that's kind of what I'm watching. It's a tough matchup. It's on the road. Baltimore looks to be, top 3 team in the NFL. And Burrow's got to show up, but you're right. It seems like he's just over that organization. So we'll see. It should be a good game. And as far as the spread, I think it's pretty accurate. And you nailed it with the 5.5.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, let's move on, man.
Let's do it. Next on the line, we're going Sunday morning to Munich, where the New York Giants are taking on Carolina. So love Munich. Don't know if I love either of these two teams. They're both 2-7. What do you think, Uncle Phil, as far as the spread and total?
Yeah, I mean, look, nothing like giving Europe our best, right? The Giants and Carolina combined record of 4-14. It'll be, I would say this would be our first 40-degree game, but it's not. As you and I both witnessed in Green Bay, we had our first 40-degree kickoff in week 9, where Green Bay and Detroit did. It was 49. Had some tremendous gusts in that game, so over 40 miles an hour, which was interesting. This one will be overcast, winds at 8 miles an hour. I've got Carolina at a 1.5-point spread. Bryce Young is starting again. Dave Canales has come out and said that today. And I've got a total at 43.
Well, as far as the spread goes, Carolina's plus 6.5. So a little off there. It's a lot of points. I agree with you, no doubt. And then the total is over 40.5, over under 40.5.
40.5. Okay. Look, I mean, I'll have to do some research, but I already kind of know which side I'll be on. I mean, Daniel Jones looks like Brian Daboll's just kind of given up on him. Only allowed him to throw 6 passes in the first half the other day against Washington. He went 4 of 6. I think he had zero yards in passing in the first half. 4 of 6, completed 4, but had 0 yards. Look, Bryce Young actually looked a little better. I think kind of taking the pressure off of him. Probably a good little revenge spot for him versus New Orleans. So I'm sure that was good. Daniel Jones, just I won't belabor this game too much. There's much more interesting games to get to, but Daniel Jones, QBR 46, 25th in the NFL. Just kind of a weird game. This is both teams have struggled against the spread this year. The Giants 2-6-1, Carolina 2-7 against the spread. So, not a whole lot to draw from that. Potentially on the totals, the Giants are 3-6 on the total, and Carolina is 7-2 to the over. So Giants decidedly on the under, Carolina decidedly on the over. So maybe some interesting things there that I'm looking at immediately. But for this one, be sure to follow me on X. I'll definitely have a primetime teaser on this one out on Sunday morning, bright and early in Munich.
Love it. Before we move on, just a quick question for you on this game. Do you think the side on this is Vegas just saying, hey, Bryce Young, he looked okay last week, but he's still Bryce Young, and we don't believe in him? Because earlier in the season, he looked awful. He was up there with Jamarcus Russell as being just one of the worst, first overall quarterbacks we've seen.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question. For me, what I typically do is I think Vegas usually gives you 2 weeks before they start changing the line. And I just think that most people they're counting on that Vegas, that the public really didn't watch Carolina and New Orleans. It probably was one of their least bet on games this past weekend. I know some people probably blindly played New Orleans, but I think you'll probably get some action on this one. Probably the sharps will step in on this one. I know most of the sharps did not step in on this game, and the sharps will probably step in on this game and take some action, and you'll probably see that line adjust. But I think I think this is potentially an opportunity to look at Carolina in this lane. But I'll again have to look at it more. But that's initially what I like.
Definitely. All righty. Well, let's move on. We'll go to the first of the noon Central, 1 Eastern games. We got the 2-7 New England Patriots heading to the 4-4 Chicago Bears.
Yeah, a little bit of weather in this game. Again, not one of the more exciting matchups for the season yet, but do get to see 2 very promising rookie quarterbacks that I think both will have bright futures here. Weather on this one's 58, 35% chance of rain. Highest wind that we had, so that we'll have this entire Sunday. So this will be something to keep monitoring as the week goes by, and before you place any bets on this, be sure and check the wind on this one. 17 miles an hour from the southwest. Obviously, the Windy City is certainly starting to live up to its namesake and do this. I've got Chicago at 3.5, and I've got a total at 41.
Chicago 3.5, total 41. I got Chicago 6 and total at 39.
Yeah, total is pretty close on that one. I certainly see that. I understand the 6 as well. I think Dre May brings a little extra juice to this. Chicago seems to be regressing. I figure it's a little tighter than that. But again, I'm not sure if it's going to be one of those games they'll be betting. Certainly the wind is going to have a factor on what I end up doing overall. Against the spread, the New England is 3-5-1 against the spread. Chicago is 5-3. It may seem like there's a decided advantage for Chicago, but just keep in mind Chicago's lost the last 2 against the spread. The total, New England's 3-5 on the totals. To the over, looks like they're actually favoring the unders. Over 3 and under on 5, where Chicago's gone over on 3 and under on 4. So something to look at there. Again, not just probably a really exciting game for most, but Chicago gains a lot of interest just because they're Chicago, right? And Caleb Williams. But unfortunately for me, look, I said it earlier in the year. I said that my only concern, I don't have any concerns with Caleb Williams as a quarterback, but he's going to have to redo his rookie year. Look, there's a lot of pressure on Shane Waldron as offensive coordinator to make this team better and to polish up Caleb Williams, and he's simply not doing it. Caleb Williams, everybody is excited about his escapability, and he's got tremendous footwork there. But his footwork within the pocket is not good. He's not stepping up when he needs to make plays. He's immediately bolting. And then some other things that I've noticed lately, I was really high on him at first. At first he was doing a kind of a one-read thing, which all rookies do, and just throwing it that one read, pre-designed plays, kind of getting him comfortable. And that worked till it didn't. And then the game seemed like it slowed down, and his feet were very settled in the pocket, and he was going through his progressions and making some good reads, and that worked. Unfortunately, the past couple of weeks, what I've seen is that footwork in the pocket. He's still calm, but he's not stepping up when he needs to. He's taking off. He's tired of getting sacked because he's getting just crushed. Because again, the Bears' offensive line is the last thing that they have, that GM Ryan Poles hadn't fixed yet, and he's got to fix that, and he will. But where he is just regressing in the fact that he's making wrong reads. Like he will just, you're supposed to, whether you take a deep route or a shallow route is based on where the corner sits or where the corner goes during that, and he'll make the absolute wrong read that you can see that the player he's supposed to throw is wide open. Unfortunately, he's just not doing that. And, clearly there's some dissension in the locker room. One of the players came out, I think it was DJ Moore, said that, they asked him, has he lost the locker room? And as Eberflus lost the locker room, and he literally came out and said, I want to say no. That's like, some really, really bad thing. It's like, asking your wife, like, did you cheat on me? And she's like, I want to say no. Well, it's that time. It's probably time to find an attorney and go look for something different because things are not going to end well. Things are not going to end well for them. Chicago under Eberflus, really interesting stat is that on the road on Sundays under Eberflus, Chicago is 0-18.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So anyway, again, the big thing for them, I think the team is regressing. Caleb Williams was sacked 6 times against the Cardinals that coming into that game were bottom 5 in the league in sacks. So just things are getting messy and getting ugly there in Chicago. But can this be a get-right game versus New England? I certainly have some concerns on that one. You'd have to take a big swallow on that one to bet Chicago this weekend.
Definitely. And before we move on to the next game, quick question on New England and Drake May. A limited amount of time that we've seen him play. Do you think he's the answer at quarterback for the New England Patriots? Or do you think he's just one of these guys that's kind of just going to be average?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I certainly think he has promise. He's certainly got the mobility on it. They they've got so many holes and pieces in New England. It's going to take a couple of years to build that squad up. This is a, Bill Belichick, as great of a coach as he was, just ruined that roster from a GM perspective by not building it the right way. And so it's going to take a while to do that. I'll be interested to see what they do in free agency and in the draft. I think they've got some opportunity. I think we really won't know if Drake May is the answer or not. Right now, he shows promise. But again, a lot of rookies show promise at first for about half the season until they get film on them. And then when they get film, like, how do you adjust once you got film? That's kind of why everybody got really so excited about C.J. Stroud last year, is because he consistently performed all year last year, and everybody's like, boom, this guy's a hit. He's phenomenal. He's really good. This year, obviously, CJ's going through a sophomore slump. Doesn't look like the same CJ. We'll be interested to see how he does. But I think by next year, probably by Thanksgiving, we'll be able to make a call on Drake May. Certainly think he has the raw tools. Is he getting the coaching? Is he getting the pieces around him? We'll find more about him next year.
Definitely. All righty, let's keep it rolling. We're going next on the line. We got 7-2 Buffalo Bills are heading to the 4-5 Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah, no, look, I love this game. I mean, it's in a dome, so there's really not a whole lot of weather there. Buffalo seems to be taking a step forward. Indianapolis seems to be taking a step back. I've got Indianapolis favored in this game. I've got it 1.5, and I've got a total of 45.
Wow. It's at +4 Indianapolis with the total of 48. So Buffalo is the favorite.
What's the total?
Total's 48.
48, yeah. Close on that one, off on that. I'll just have to warn you guys, I did this last night while watching the election results about midnight last night. So some of my guesses may not be the best, but it looks like I'm pretty close on the totals. But I'm surprisingly off on this. That seems like a lot of points, but I understand Indianapolis coming off Sunday night, looking like their team took a step back, particularly in the running game. There's just not the threat of Anthony Richardson, as far as him running the ball. So you're just not getting the yards before contact when handing off to a running back, right now. So that's shortening things up, and Joe Flacco, again, probably why he's a backup. He's a really good backup, but there's some games where he doesn't have his greatest game. He didn't have a great game against Minnesota, but I think Minnesota, let's go ahead and give credit where credit's due. I think Minnesota had a lot to do with that. Buffalo, on the other hand, Amari Cooper was out, and unfortunately, Keon Coleman got hurt in that game. His wrist and arm are injured, and came out today that kind of questionable for this weekend. So it's something to keep an eye on. Presumably they'll get Amari back, but may lose Keon Coleman. So it's something to certainly look at there. What I love about Buffalo is that this offensive line just doesn't allow sacks. This was the big knock on Sean McDermott. It's like, how many years does it take these defensive coaches to build an offensive line? Pittsburgh still hasn't built theirs where it needs to be, but Buffalo hadn't until now. This is just a really solid offensive line. Josh Allen is having just a great year quietly. He's still up there for MVP, but a lot of people start talking to him. Still talking about Lamar Jackson. Again, not enough people are talking about Jared Goff. I'm on that hype train, but we'll kind of get to that later. But Josh Allen has more TDs than sacks and turnovers combined this year. So just a really exciting time. I'm pretty pumped about Buffalo right now. I like watching this team, but again, looking at this game from a spread standpoint, Buffalo's 5-4 against the spread. Indianapolis is 7-2 against the spread. Both teams have high cover percentages. It'll be interesting. That's pretty high line, especially for against the road or on the road for Buffalo. Interesting to see how this plays out. Buffalo's 5-4 as far as overs, in favor of the overs on the total, and Indianapolis is 6-3 in favor of the unders on the total, with the last 4 going under the total on that. So I'm actually really looking forward to this game to do this. It'll be interesting to see if Indianapolis, the really key to this game, I think, is really not just Josh Allen, because he's going to be Josh Allen, but it's obviously the health, getting Amari Cooper back on Buffalo's side, but on Indianapolis' side is that, can they establish a running game? Can they actually get some more yards there? Because the problem with them is that by them not being able to run the ball on early downs against Minnesota, left them in long second and third downs, which just became untenable and eventually broke loose. That game looked like Indianapolis was going to cover the entire game, and all of a sudden at the end it kind of got away from them. So that was unfortunate for bettors on that who had the Indianapolis side. But what were your thoughts? I know you paid particularly close attention to that Minnesota-Indianapolis game.
Yeah, Minnesota's got a great defense, and looked like Joe Flacco just made a couple bad reads. He had guys open in the flat, and he made the wrong read, and that kind of decided the game. But, I also was watching Miami-Buffalo last week, and it seemed like Buffalo couldn't stop the run. A-Chain and Mostert on Miami were just eating them alive going down the field. And, I think you're right. I think it's going to come down to, can Indy run the ball on Buffalo, who showed that, they didn't look great against the run last week. But if I'm not mistaken, I think Jonathan Taylor is a little banged up. I don't know if I'm super impressed with Indianapolis's backup running backs. It's Goodson and Sermon. So, but I see where you're coming from, where you guessed 1.5 Indy, just because it's a lot of points for Buffalo on the road at 4.
Yeah, it certainly is. But look, as well as they've been playing, I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but I'll let that be the last word.
Awesome. Next up, we have Minnesota 6-2 heading to 2-7 Jacksonville.
Yeah, this game's, of course, outside Jacksonville, definitely not in the 40s there. It'll be 82 degrees, slight chance of rain, 16%. Southeast winds, 9 miles per hour. I've got this one. I've got Minnesota favored in this one by 3.5, and I've got a total of 45.
Well, you nailed the total, sitting at 45. Well done. And Minnesota is actually favored by 4.5, so pretty close there with your 3.5 guess.
Yeah, I mean, a night after midnight of election watching, I'm so glad we don't have to watch any more commercials about the candidates anymore. So that is, that doesn't bother me at all. Both teams against the spread. Minnesota is 6-2 against the spread, losing the last 2 out of 3. And Jacksonville is 5-4 against the spread. Surprisingly, I mean, look, you think that Jacksonville not having this great year, but surprisingly pretty decent against the spread. In fact, covering against their last 3. As far as the totals, Minnesota has favored the unders by going 5-3 on. 5-3 on the under. Jacksonville on the opposite side, 6-3 to the over on those games. Kind of the big news on this one is on the injury report that's creeped up to today is that quarterback Trevor Lawrence is limited at practice with what they're calling upper body soreness. They have, it must be decent as far as an injury, because they've actually signed quarterback CJ Beathard off Miami's practice squad to bring in. So look for that one. That's going to be key to this game. If you certainly see Trevor Lawrence is out, that line's going to balloon up. Interesting to see how that rolls up on this one. Look, I said I like Minnesota. I thought Cam Robinson did a really good game last week from a left tackle perspective. Newly assimilated from Jacksonville. And again, not much the left tackle has to do is just make sure your guy doesn't get around or on the edge. Not as complicated as maybe some of the inside positions, the center guard positions, but certainly incredibly important. And Sam Darnold's glad he's there. So, look, I think it should be an interesting game. Any thoughts on this one at all?
Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to if Lawrence is healthy. Jacksonville, I didn't think they looked very good against Philadelphia. I don't had any business, even making that a game. I mean, that was all Sirianni and Philly.
Yeah,
just kind of letting off the gas and making mistakes. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Peterson will try to play spoiler the rest of the year. And look, Lawrence is still a good quarterback in my opinion. I think he's one of those guys that, it might take a few years. It might take a new team before he really comes into his own, because Jacksonville's just an awful organization. So,
yeah, I mean, Lawrence just hadn't had a really good start. Look, Doug Peterson's welcome wore thin in Philadelphia. I mean, he's literally a Super Bowl winning coach and was let go. And that's kind of his track record. And the same thing's probably going to happen here. Shad Khan, owner of the Jaguars, doesn't typically fire coaches midseason, so this will probably just kind of go this way, and then it'll be a gentleman's escort out the door after the season's over. You certainly see this. You just wonder if, depending on who Jacksonville gets as their next head coach, that you hope that it's somebody that we finally get to see the true Trevor Lawrence of who he can be as far as potential. Look, I still have my doubts. I've heard some things out there that I'm not quite sit well with me about Trevor, off the field. He's a good guy and everything like that. Not that, but just his passion, true passion for the game, for that. So, look, I hope he continues, and I hope he continues to get progress. I've seen some fire out of him recently, which makes me excited that maybe that passion's building, and hopefully that'll continue. But I'm with you. The health of Trevor Lawrence certainly will play a big role in who wins this game, or at least covers the spread.
Definitely. Well, let's move on. We got 5-4 Denver heading to Kansas City, obviously undefeated at 8-0. Divisional matchup, should be a good game. Probably one of the better defenses Kansas City will play all year, even though that defense got exposed last week by Baltimore.
Yeah, and look, I didn't say this beforehand, but week 9, I cover the weather, and I know a lot of people may kind of zone out on that when I talk about the weather, but let me just tell you, we saw it last week for the first time. Weather impacted the total of the game. Certainly in Green Bay, Detroit, that was something that we had talked about earlier in the week. Hopefully people took note of that and got on that. We also saw it, typically Arizona's a dome, but they opened up the stadium and rain came in. And so that affected both those teams weren't scoring in the first quarter. That total went under the total as well. So was interesting to see. The total did the opposite last night as that game went over the total last night Monday night with Kansas City, even though there was some rain. But it's important. But getting to the weather this time, looks like doesn't seem to be any rain in Kansas City's forecast. 57, partly cloudy, southwest winds, 10 miles an hour. My guess on this is I'm going to go back to and I'm going to say Kansas City 8.5, and I'll say a total of 43.5.
So 8.5 and 43.5. I've got total at Kansas City 8 and over under at 41.5. So very close on both those. Pretty much nail in the side.
Okay, good. No, makes sense. As far as the sides go, Denver's 5-3 against the spread. Kansas City's 4-4. Surprisingly, I mean, look again, really good team. 8-0. That's and if you extrapolate that out from last season, including the postseason, they're 14-0 in their last 14 games, and that is a franchise record for Kansas City. Pretty amazing, but just not a very good team against the spread. It looks like, it felt like last on Monday night, especially with Tampa Bay, the defense didn't really show up, and I felt like they just kind of played with their food a little bit. Had it been the playoffs, probably a different atmosphere, but just didn't feel like the defense really got after them. No disrespect to Tampa Bay and to Baker, because I think Baker's a baller, and I think he just does a phenomenal job. He's gotten better each week or each year that he's been in the league, but they just didn't have any weapons, and there was really no excuse for Kansas City to let Tampa Bay hang around. Especially, I thought Andy Reid got a little over creative in the first half. Tampa Bay has really good side-to-side speed. They were making headway running it up the middle. Andy Reid, sometimes gets a little too cute with his play calling. Did some, double reverse end around and got sacked and knocked him out of field goal range in the first one. Xavier Worthy not paying attention to the sideline, wide open at the corner of the end zone. Patrick Mahomes throwing deep, and he's out of bounds, and there's no excuse for that. Not surprisingly, Xavier Worthy didn't get another target the rest of the night. So, he's not Tyreek Hill yet. So, again, just some things there that I saw early on, and that gave Tampa Bay enough confidence to hang around. That won't happen in the playoffs, but just kind of a not a fun team to bet for right now, because they kind of do these stupid things that allow other teams to hang in. We'll see if they do that right now. Again, they continue to play board, in these regular season games, like most teams do during preseason games. Kansas City seems to do this during regular season games. Really interesting thing is a little news about Isaiah Pacheco. Obviously went out with a fractured fibula early this season. Looks like he's going to be back the end of November, early December. So they're going to have him back for the stretch run. So Kansas City just should be embarrassed about all the riches you have. Certainly making a stretch run. Look like they're well positioned to go back to another Super Bowl. Look, Bo Nix, again, we talked about it last week, how he had a good October. But again, it was a level of competition. That's why I had Baltimore last week as my bonus pick. It was my strongest pick. That game was never in doubt. They just absolutely crushed Denver. And it was because of the level of competition. I always go back and review who teams have played, how they're playing against the spread in the previous games as well, kind of dictates that. This was, just a really good spot. Bad spot for Denver. This is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, the divisional game should be a little tighter than that. 8.5 doesn't seem like that much, but for Kansas City to cover if they were serious. But will they be serious this week? They haven't shown it to be. But do you have enough guts to bet Denver after last week's showing? I don't know. We will certainly see. But the great thing about Kansas City, again, is that, when the moments are the biggest, they control it. Like, obviously, when it went to overtime, you saw the reaction when the line judge flipped the coin and said pick it, and it went in favor of Kansas City to get the ball. You saw Baker Mayfield just lean his head back and go, because he knew the game was over. It was just it was not going to happen with Patrick Mahomes. When those moments like that, there's just nobody better. Look, he is, I know like people like, is he the greatest ever and things like that. Look, he's not in that conversation yet. I mean, look, Brady's got 7 rings, he's got 3, but and Brady, of course, beat him twice in the playoffs. So, but he has the opportunity to be in that conversation as he's going on. He certainly is the greatest ever as far as a start of any major sport, of the big 3 sports, the fastest start of any of that, and he's the greatest ever, at least to start a career and what he's accomplished so far. So, look, love watching Patrick Mahomes, but man, betting on him like I did on Monday night can be fraught with peril, especially in the regular season.
Definitely. And, I think it's great for the NFL that we have a quarterback that can chase Brady. Brady got 7. You're thinking no one's ever going to catch that. Mahomes has 3. He's 28 years old, I believe. He has a shot, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to chase greatness.
It absolutely is. And you see, again, he's got it. It's an organizational thing. You've got the Hunt family, A+. You've got Brett Veach, GM, A+. You've got Andy Reid, coach, A+. And you've got Patrick Mahomes, quarterback, A+. So they've got all the necessary ingredients because, it's not only from the drafting of GM, but look what they've done in the in free agency. They went out and got before the trade deadline, I got DeAndre Hopkins. So, with him on board as well, Pacheco's coming back. I mean, you can see this team coalescing and kind of coming together, and you can see what they're doing. They have a plan. It's just like they always have money to make moves. Unlike other teams that aren't making moves, you look at the Bengals, you look at Dallas, what the heck they're doing. But Kansas City just seems to have a plan, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And you're like, are you kidding me? You have money for that. You've already got this squad built. They've just built an outstanding team, and you can see this going the way it's going to go. Like, look, Tom Brady had to have Bill Belichick. He had to have Robert Kraft. They had to have the organization they have to succeed. The environment plays a huge part of that. As Baker Mayfield, when he went to Cleveland, now he is in Tampa Bay and thriving, an organization that's supporting him. The same things happen with Patrick Mahomes. Look, he is phenomenal. He is, especially in those key moments, probably the greatest to ever do it already in key moments. Like, just for instance, with Kansas City. Kansas City is number 1 in the NFL on third down conversion at 54%. It's the best third down conversion since 2011. Again, that's Patrick Mahomes. In the moments, he lives for those moments. And when the game's on the line, you want the ball in the hands of Patrick Mahomes.
Absolutely. Well, should be a great game. Looking forward to it. Definitely. Denver KC is always fun, but let's keep it going. We're going to go to New Orleans next, where the 6-3 Atlanta Falcons are coming to play the 2-7 New Orleans Saints.
Looks on paper certainly a mismatch. We'll see how this works up. Obviously, the firing of Dennis Allen is the big news out of this story this week. Interim head coach, who's the special teams coordinator, Darren Rizzi, takes over, which is kind of an odd thing to have special teams coach. Typically you'd have an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak being the offensive coordinator, kind of young, but again, just shows that the lack of talent there in the coaching staff just isn't there. We'll see. A lot of times you get a bump from an interim coach that comes in there. We'll see if New Orleans can do that. This one's obviously in the dome, so no weather. I've got this one. I've got Atlanta favored by 3.5, and I've got a total of 47.
Well, you nailed the side. It's Atlanta favored by 3.5, and you just about nailed the total. It's 46.5.
Oh, wow. Good.
So pretty on the money there. So
Yeah, look, no, that's good. I'm glad I'm kind of seeing that one for what it is. Look, the side on this one, Atlanta, pretty, not a whole lot to take from that. Against the spread, Atlanta's 4-4 as far as total is concerned. Atlanta is a slight lean to under, being they've gone the under 5 out of the 9 games. New Orleans, a little bit different, obviously. They're 3-6 against the total, with the last few, obviously, clearly not. I mean, 3-6 against the side, and clearly not covering the last few games. The total there have gone over 6 out of the 9 games they played. So again, I don't know if there's a lot to take away from the recency. The last 3 out of 4 have gone over with New Orleans. They haven't covered in the last 6 of 7, but I don't know that you can extrapolate that. You can while the coach is still there, like Doug Peterson and Eberflus. You can typically watch the sides, you can watch the totals, and you can kind of see those until those teams get fired. Dallas the same way, right? Those coaches, you can see the coaches that are going to get fired. And right up until they get fired, you can kind of continue with the same pattern. But when they get fired, the pattern changes. Typically, a new coach, the interim coach, things change. A little bit of a potentially a tricky game on this one. Marshawn Lattimore was traded on this one. It was good for New Orleans. In the fact, not the fact that you lose a guy like that and what he brings, the energy he brings to the field, the locker room. But, before this trade, New Orleans going into next year was going to be $90 million over the cap. So, look, they've got an old roster and an expensive one. So this is not really a great situation for a next head coach to come into. There's going to have to be some cuts, some restructuring. This is a bad situation for someone to come into. This roster has been mismanaged, and I'm just not talking about from a coaching perspective, but also from a GM perspective. So it's going to be interesting to see how it does. Obviously, Marcus Lattimore, having him traded to Washington helps Washington, but it also takes $18 million off the cap space for next year for New Orleans. But again, still got a long way to go. Injuries on this game: Drake London suffered a hip pointer, considered day to day. We'll see how this is go. I'm not again encouraged by New Orleans, but again, probably a stay away from game for me. Or potentially New Orleans. But New Orleans would be just a bet based on history of them getting a bump. But I'll probably stay away from this one.
Sweet. Before we move on, quick question on Atlanta. Are they for real? I know they're 6-3. I know before the season you predicted them to be a pretty high seed in the NFC. Are they legit, or are they just a product of kind of a weak schedule and a weak division?
Yeah, great question. They had the weakest schedule of any team in the NFL. So a lot of that is going that way. Look, I had Dallas +3 and the over in my notebook. Unfortunately, neither one hit. The teaser I'd put down for that game actually did hit my notebook, so at least I got that. But the side, the total, I was off. But if you go back and look at the game, Dallas outgained Atlanta and outrushed Atlanta in that game. It was the penalties where Dallas had 9 penalties. Atlanta had 4. It was silly, sloppy mistakes. Dallas definitely doesn't have the roster that it should to compete. We knew that coming into the season. It was one of my big predictions coming into the year that Dallas would not only have a losing record, but would be out of playoff contention by Thanksgiving. That looks like it's going to hold true. But again, Dallas beat them, as far as yards, in both passing and rushing. But unfortunately, and that's even with Dak and CD going out, and we'll kind of get to that here in a minute. But again, it was a little bit of fool's gold in that one, but just some, I've always had a little bit of sympathy for Mike McCarthy, just because it was the roster, and everybody knew that. But after this past game, Dallas had some lack of attention and some sloppiness. It was just poor coaching that had led to some mistakes that led to that game just getting out of hand. It really was not that close. But yeah, I think there's potentially a little bit of fool's gold here with Atlanta.
All righty. Well, let's keep going. Next up, the second to last of the 1 Eastern time slot games. We got the 4-4 San Francisco 49ers heading to the 4-5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Look, it's a must-win for both teams. There's no question about it. Both these teams, Tampa Bay's trying to stay in playoff contention in a very crowded NFC. San Francisco's trying to get back to first place again in a very crowded NFC West. This game here, again, Tampa, 86 degrees, by far our warmest venue of the entire weekend. Partly cloudy, northeast winds 9 miles an hour. Great weekend to go out there and watch the game. I've got this one. I've actually got Tampa Bay favored by 1.5, and I've got a total of 46.5. Now, I don't know sure how I quite arrived at that, but I'm quite certain that one's wrong, and I've got the wrong team favored. But go ahead and tell me.
Yeah, you got the wrong team favored. San Fran's actually -6.
Yep.
So no surprise, though, with McCaffrey likely returning, in the over-under is 51.
51, yeah. Pretty high on the total on that. It's very interesting. I certainly see that from a bookmaker standpoint. I think this is the week that they actually get back Mike Evans, Tampa Bay does. So that's something to look at. We'll certainly look at that as we kind of go on, throughout the week. I think that'll be an interesting game for sure. Look, against the side, San Francisco's 4-4 against the spread, 5-3 to the over on the totals. Tampa Bay's 4-4 against the spread, just like San Francisco, and the total theirs have gone over 7 out of 9 games. So I can certainly see that. I can understand that. Really will be an interesting game to see from that. Look, San Francisco, they have a right to be favored. They've outgained their opponents by 98 yards a game. That's by far the best in the NFL. They have the second graded offense in the NFL according to PFF. And Tampa Bay, I can understand why the total's up. Tampa Bay, we talked about how Kansas City's number 1 in third down conversions earlier. Tampa Bay is actually second in the NFL in third down conversions. So, look, these teams are going to move the ball. I think this could be one of the better exciting games of the weekend. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, it should be a great game, and you're right. It's really must-win for both these teams. I mean, if you lose, if you're San Fran, then it just becomes a lot harder to make the playoffs with 5 losses going into Week 11. But yeah, Tampa's frisky. Baker's having a great season, even though he lost Godwin, lost Evans. He still went out in Kansas City and put on a pretty good show. So we'll see if he can do that again at home versus pretty solid San Francisco defense.
Yeah, no, totally agree. Look, that was a big stage Monday night. Coming back on a short week, but at least they're going to be playing at home, not having to travel. We'll see how they end up doing, but should be an interesting game for sure.
Alrighty, let's finish up the last of the 1 Eastern games. We have the 6-2 Pittsburgh Steelers head into the 7-2 Washington Commanders.
Yeah, from a record standpoint, this is I think the premier game this week, right? You've got weather at 62 degrees, 39% chance of showers, winds from the south at 8 miles an hour. I've got Washington favored by 3, and I've got a total of 43.
Well, you're spot on with the side. It is Washington favored by 3, and as far as the total goes, it's 45.5. So pretty close there.
Yeah, not surprised. Look, from a side perspective, Pittsburgh is 6-2 against the spread, which is really good, but only to be beaten out by Washington, who is 7-2 against the spread. So Washington has covered 7 out of the last 8, and Pittsburgh has covered the last 3. So again, setting up to be a heck of a match. On the totals, Pittsburgh's 4-4 overs unders, and Washington is 6 out of the last 9 has gone to the over. So interesting things to see how that's gone. You see there's maybe a slight lean to the over, but both these defenses look like they're playing better. Pittsburgh, again, coming off the bye, getting help that we talked about earlier from the defensive line, get another edge rusher from Green Bay, Preston Smith, and also picking up wide receiver Mike Williams from the Jets. Obviously, we saw that when Aaron Rodgers threw him under the bus, we knew his time was short, and certainly Devontae Adams came in, and you knew that targets were going to go down, made him expendable. So be looking forward to him getting a fresh start. We'll see how this game goes. The big news again for Washington, cornerback Marshon Lattimore got traded. He got picked up. This is a team that, again, is going all in. They have a chance to win the division, certainly with their schedule. I think that they do. And they've got to be looking around right now. They're looking at Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia, the Rams, even San Francisco. All those teams have premier wide receivers. They need a good cover corner. Marshon Lattimore brings that edge to the field as well. Really, really, really exciting. And they need to have that. Commanders fans got to be pretty excited about having this addition. They've given up an average of 68% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. That's 24th in the NFL. Marshon Lattimore certainly changes that game a little bit, for them on defense. But the real story of Washington is their offense. 49% of their drives reach the red zone. That's number 1 in the NFL back to 2000. I mean, that's just phenomenal percentage by Washington on what they're able to accomplish. Again, tribute to Cliff Kingsbury and also to Jaden Daniels. I mean, gosh, that's just a match made in heaven. Can you imagine this, that Cliff Kingsbury went to the Bears, interviewed for the job, really wanted the job for to coach Caleb Williams, and unfortunately, the Bears turned down Caleb Williams, and they actually sent him out of the door. And so now that resuming the live stream on TikTok, for whatever reason, it shuts off every now and then. But anyway, they sent him out the door and they picked Shane Waldron, and now Caleb Williams regressing. Can you imagine Caleb Williams with Cliff Kingsbury? That's exactly who he needed and who he wanted. And I just hard to believe they did. But again, talks about their offense. We talked about 49 of their drives reach the end zone, number 1 in the NFL. 61% of their drives score points, number 1 in the NFL since back to 2000. Washington, 50% of the teams in the top 10 in percentage of drives to reach the end zone through week 9 made the Super Bowl that year. So, look, if you're looking at that, they've got a 1 in 2 chance of making the Super Bowl based on historical numbers. I'm not sure that this team is the team, but my gosh, they look like they're playing in their setting. They look like they're set up well, unlike the Dallas Cowboys, who look like they just have a mess. I mean, Jerry Jones, he may be only the second worst GM in the NFL next to Bill Belichick.
Most definitely. I mean, we're really going to find out if Jaden Daniels is the real deal. We're going to be 10 games in with this one, plenty of film on him, and this is probably the best defense he's faced in his rookie season. So if he can go out there and put up a show against the Steelers, pretty impressive. And I think people would have to just come to terms like this guy's legit.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the big thing that's got them well is his judgment. His judgment. They've only had 3 giveaways on offense this entire year. I mean, they've had 1 fumble and they've had 2 interceptions, or he's had. And so, I mean, really, he has done the things that rookies that typically don't do. I mean, he has not given the ball away, and he is just extremely accurate. The game doesn't seem like it's that fast for him, and he's doing a great job.
Definitely. And one last question before we move on. I know some people have been commenting saying, hey, Uncle Phil, you said Pittsburgh wasn't going to make the playoffs. They're 6-2. What do you have to say now? I'm looking at their schedule, and man, they got Commanders, Ravens, Browns twice, Bengals, Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs, Bengals. I mean,
look,
man,
it was always the back half of their schedule, and it's a great question. And I'm just going to go ahead and say where Uncle Phil was wrong on that one because, look, I didn't think the Steelers would. I didn't think that they had a chance to make it this year, but what I didn't count on is the AFC being so down. The AFC is just devoid of really good teams. I mean, they've got some great teams at the top. You've got Buffalo, you've got Kansas City, you certainly got Baltimore, but you just don't have those. You don't have a lot of depth to this. Pittsburgh's got some really tough games the back half of the season. That's really what I predicated my prediction on, was the back half of the season. The Browns certainly aren't the team that we thought they were. They've certainly been sellers at the trade deadline, rightfully so. Team's kind of a mess. You kind of get good Jameis and bad Jameis sometimes. But I think Pittsburgh's certainly poised to make the playoffs again. I certainly wouldn't bet against this point. Certainly I was wrong on that prediction.
Okay, just wanted to check because just looking at that schedule, it's like, man, I mean, I could personally see a scenario where they only finish with 2 or 3 wins.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at if you want to scroll back and go like, who they've beaten. They've certainly had the softer end of their schedule up front, and they've certainly met some teams that have had some quarterback issues, some dysfunction, and I think that the schedule has really set up well for them to finish where they are right now. We're about to find out who Pittsburgh really is here, and although Russell Wilson's done really well the past couple games, I'm not sure the competition that he's faced in the past couple games is what he's going to face here in the next several games, as you mentioned, for the rest of the season.
Definitely. All righty. Well, let's get to the 4:05 Eastern time slot where we have the 2-6 Tennessee Titans heading to the 5-3 Los Angeles Chargers.
Yeah. I like an interesting game here. Again, it's in a dome, so no weather reports. I've got the Chargers as 8.5-point favorites and a total at 43.5.
All right. 43.5 on the total. It's 39, so a little high on the total, but the side is 7.5. You said 8.5. So pretty close there. 8.5, 7.5 could pretty much go either way.
Yeah, certainly understand that. I mean, look, the Chargers, you look at what Harbaugh has done with essentially the same guys on defense that he had last year. And I think that, look, Herbert has certainly looked better. He's more comfortable. He's not getting killed this year. Usually by this time this year, Herbert is injured and he's just taken a beating. It's not been that way this year. Jim Harbaugh has established a running game, established play action. It's been good. But the real story is that defense. That defense is historic. That defense is the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL right now. They are just they're allowing 12.6 points per game. The only season-long performance near that mark in in the past 20 years is the 2006 Baltimore Ravens, who had 12.7, and that defense was historic. Baltimore unit ranked as one of the best in the history of the NFL on defense. So, look, the cool thing is that, or the scary thing for people in the AFC, is that in the past 3 games, Herbert leads the NFL with 910 yards passing, which is just outstanding. So Harbaugh, the way he's built this team is just incredible. This is not fool's gold. This is exactly what Harbaugh does. We predicted it at the very beginning of the season. As anybody did who had watched football at all mildly, that Harbaugh would change the fortunes of this team. Certainly has. The 2 LA teams look to be like they're rounding into shape. And I don't think anybody wants to face the Chargers right now.
Totally agree. And if this continues, I don't think anyone will want to face them in the playoffs. Just Harbaugh knows how to win, and he's done it at college and the NFL level. He got pretty close to a Super Bowl, losing to the Ravens and his brother. But I've got nothing else to say about Tennessee besides I don't really like watching them play. I mean, they were in overtime last week, and I was like, I just don't really care. I mean, they're the one team. They're just not fun to watch.
Look, it's an interesting thing that you bring up. I mean, because we're kind of watching Brian Callahan. We saw it last year with Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. We saw that team was overmatched from a roster standpoint. They were supposed to be bad, were bad, but that team never stopped fighting. They fought hard. They were a tough out each week for every team they faced. Tennessee is really kind of struggling right now. I don't see that same pop right now from the Tennessee team that I was hoping to see from a new coach and the injection of that there. We'll see how it turns out. Not really excited about Tennessee. Tennessee games are typically on a corner TV for me, but this game certainly gets my attention just because I want to watch the Chargers.
Definitely. Alrighty, let's keep going. We got the first of the 4:25 Eastern games. New York Jets at 3-6 are heading to the 5-4 Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah, games in a dome, so no weather again, unless the Cardinals open up the roof again. So we'll have to pay attention to that. My guess on this one is the Cardinals are favored by 2.5, and I'll take 43.5 as a total.
Already 43.5. It's 46. It's pretty close there. And then Cardinals 2.5 favorites. The Jets are actually favored in this one by 1.
Interesting.
So,
all right. And you said, what was the total on that one again?
Total's 46.
46. Okay, interesting. Okay. I think people just aren't believing in the Cardinals yet. I think the team's pretty for real. The Jets are 3-6 against the side or against the spread there, where the Cardinals are 6-3 against spread. So they're a sneaky cover team. Really interesting team. They're kind of a good team to bet for. Totals on the Cardinals, they've gone 4-4-1 in theirs, and the Jets have also gone 4-4-1 on the totals. So not a whole lot to look at there. Interesting. The Jets have beaten Tennessee, New England, and Houston. Arizona's beaten the Rams, beaten San Francisco. They've beaten the Chargers. They've beaten Miami. They've beaten Chicago. Who's got the better wins? That's rhetoric. I mean, it's clear that Arizona's beaten the Rams, beaten the 49ers, beaten the Chargers, beaten the Dolphins, beaten the Bears, where the Jets have only beaten the Titans, the Patriots, and the helpless Texans last week. So, look, I still am not a believer in the Jets. I think that Rodgers is probably a good teammate, but he's just a bad leader. He doesn't bring teams together. Again, Kyler Murray continues to impress me. I love this running game of Arizona, and I want to dig in this game, but right now, maybe I'm just kind of getting on the Arizona hype train myself, but I lean toward Arizona. What do you think about this game?
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you. I feel like Arizona is just awesome when they get McBride the ball. I feel like when I've been watching them this year, it's like the games they've been winning, McBride's getting touches. And I think he's probably the best tight end in the NFL right now. Obviously, you have Harrison, who's a weapon. I don't think he's better than Malik Neighbors as far as rookie wide receivers, but he's still pretty solid. And yeah, you're right. They got a great run game with James Conner. I mean, they've got the 2 and 3 running backs too. Trey Benson from Florida State, DeMarcado. Kyler's obviously having a pretty good season. Man, I like the Cardinals. I think you're right, and they've got some good wins. To your point, they're a legit team.
Yeah, I think they're a legit playoff team. They certainly lead the NFC West. I like them. To your point, love Trey McBride, love James Conner. They've got people there that are certainly ready to line up and hit you in the mouth. This Cardinal team is for real, and would love to see them get in the playoffs. I think that'd be fun.
Definitely. Before we move on, quick question on the Jets.
Yep.
If they don't make the playoffs, is this it for Aaron Rodgers? Because this looks like the end. I mean,
yeah.
Man.
I mean, look, there's definitely a different look between, 40 years old looks different on people, and it definitely looked different. It definitely looks different on Rodgers than it did on Brady. Brady was, a guy who, cared about his body, was very focused on the game. Rodgers, not as much on either or on the details. And this is kind of what you get. Like, again, Rodgers has been in decline for about the past, 3 to 4 seasons. So not really shocking that this is what it is. Maybe he'll go on a darkness retreat and have a discussion with himself and come out and realize that this is not going to be his year. Because look, I think the Jets are a mess. And again, it all starts at the top. We talked about Kansas City, how Brett Veach just, as a GM, the Hunt family as the owners, just A+. You've got Woody Johnson, and it just becomes chaotic from there for the Jets. So, Jets fans, it's tough. I feel for you, but this is a poorly run organization, and Aaron Rodgers certainly doesn't make it any better. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he folded it up after this.
Yeah, it looks that way to me. Well, let's go to the next game, the last of the 4:25 Eastern time slot. We got pretty historic game with Philadelphia at 6-2 heading to 3-5 Dallas. For whatever reason, Dallas-Philly matchups are just always fun to watch for me, and this should be no different, even though Dak's not playing.
Yeah, it should be. Look, I can't say that I become less and less excited about Dallas each week that goes by. I mean, they're kind of living down to my expectations, unfortunately. This one's in a dome, of course. My guess is Philly at 6.5, and I've got a total of 47.
Okay. Dallas +7, Philly over 43.5.
All right. So +7. You said 43.5?
Yes, sir.
All right. Interesting. Lower on the total than I would have thought. But again, we are dawning into the Cooper Rush era, which is, again, you traded a 4th-round pick to go get Trey Lance. And that's supposedly going to be the backup. And you've got Cooper Rush starting. Again, this is mismanagement of the roster of the highest proportions. Jerry Jones is not going to relinquish this. This feels like Al Davis when he got old with the Raiders. He became rigid and just kind of ran that organization in the ground, which they've never really recovered. And this is what's happening again with Dallas. You've got, Jerry Jones is becoming, more and more eccentric, and he's just running this organization in the ground. And I just don't have a whole lot of hopes for this. I mean, tons of injuries on this one. Devontae Smith didn't practice for the third day in a row with a hamstring. Philadelphia, A.J. Brown with a knee day-to-day. Obviously, he's the key to that offense. You know, when you look at A.J. Brown, when Jalen Hurts plays with him and when he doesn't, it's a different game. Dak, of course, on IR. He got placed on IR with a hamstring. That's terrible news. What was even worse news that came out that Adam Schefter reported just this evening was this looks like an avulsion of the hamstring, which means that the tendon has actually come away from the bone on that, which typically takes a lot longer than the 4 weeks of an IR would take. This is just really bad news for the Cowboys. Of where they're going. CeeDee Lamb has got a sprained AC joint in his shoulder. Has a chance to be back this week. Also, good news for Dallas on Micah Parsons. He has a chance to come back this week as well. So, we'll see. This is it's kind of an odd deal. Philadelphia from against the spread, they're 4-4 against the spread and 4-4 on the total. Dallas is 2-5-1 against the spread and 5-3. 5 out of 8 have gone over the total on that. So, I don't know what we can take from that, but, we'll see. Again, like Philadelphia, love the roster, just absolutely cannot stand the coach. Nick Sirianni cost me a lot of money this weekend. I had 2 different live bets. You saw those. Both are at $5,000 a piece. They were crushing Jacksonville, but Nick Sirianni, decided that he just wasn't interested in taking points. I mean, he went for it twice on 4th downs in field goal range, didn't get those. Those are 6 points. The 2-point conversions failed on those. I think there was 2 or 3 of those. And so, again, just a complete mismanagement. They won in spite of him, but not because of him. So again, this guy is just makes just constant bad decisions. Again, they were absolutely dominating Jacksonville and almost lost. This is going to hurt them in the playoffs. This is going to cost them. They'll make it to the playoffs. They've got a good record. NFC East is an absolute dumpster fire, so they'll pick up some more easy wins for that. It'll come down to them and Washington for who wins that division. One of those teams, of course, will end up as a wild card, I'm pretty sure. But this is going to cost them. And then right after that game, Sirianni is going to be fired, which he rightfully should be. I think Dallas, again, Dallas is just a mess. I mean, again, first three game losing streak since 2020, probably going to 4-game losing streak after this weekend. It's just kind of a bad deal. And, again, we talked about, Jerry making some bad decisions from a GM perspective, how he went and got Trey Lance with a 4th-round pick. And, again, now he's not the backup. It's Cooper Rush, who you can pick up for a song. So, I mean, I don't get it. Again, Jerry does what he always does. He overpays for everybody he gets. And I don't know if it's just a pride thing or what he wants to do as an ego thing, or if he's just that terrible of a GM. And I think it's a little bit of both. But they got Jonathan Mingo from Carolina, which is okay. I mean, he's a great route runner. He's a big-bodied guy, but he's not really going to get a guy who's going to get separation. They really should have been sellers at the trade deadline because they need to rebuild this roster and get some more picks for this. But unfortunately, they were buyers. They got Jonathan Mingo. And guess what? It cost them a 4th-round pick. And just to kind of put that in perspective, Chiefs got D-Hop for a 5th-round pick. Jets got Devontae Adams for a 5th-round pick. The Ravens got Deontay Johnson for a 5th-round pick. And the Dallas gets Jonathan Mingo, cost him a 4th-round pick. I mean, what are you doing? just don't get it. Jerry, I mean, Cowboys fans, look, I used to be a Cowboys fan growing up and 20 years ago. But again, I turned in my Dallas Cowboy fan card once Jerry Jones got rid of Jimmy Johnson, because then it showed me that he was more about himself than he was about the team. And again, this just goes and shows it. My big saying again, it's okay to be wrong. It's not okay to stay wrong. And Jerry Jones continually stays wrong.
Definitely. Yeah, this I think seeing these injuries, you got AJ Brown questionable, you got Devonta Smith questionable, CD questionable. It's like can't really make a call on this one until Sunday, just because the injuries are you just go look at the injury report. It's like half the team for both these teams is kind of banged up, or at least key position players, Micah Parsons, Diggs. Man, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, those are this time of year. It's all about injuries. Who's going to get healthy? That injury report on Friday will be really telling. To your point, the one thing, Mike McCarthy can be proud of, the last game that Dennis Allen ever won was against the Cowboys.
There you go. Well, let's keep going. We got 2 more games. Sunday Night Football. Detroit 7-1, looking like the best team in the league, in my opinion, going into Houston at 6-3.
Yeah, we talked about Pittsburgh at Washington being potentially the greatest, potentially the best game from a record standpoint. This one stands out. Obviously, Houston doesn't seem like legit with their 6-3 record, as you just mentioned. Detroit just seems like a juggernaut out there. Just seems outstanding. Obviously in a dome, no weather. My guess on this one is Detroit favored by 5.5 and a total of 47.5.
All right. It is Houston plus 3.5, and the total is 49. So pretty close in the total and on the spread.
Yeah, I think Houston's going to get Nico Collins back. I think that's what they think is going to make the difference. Will be interesting. Detroit looked surprisingly fast in a very sloppy track going outdoors for the first time all season. Last week, they go back into the dome, which is their comfort zone. Again, expect C.J. Stroud to be running for his life. We'll see. Detroit, they're 7-1 against the spread. It's tough for me to bet against them. Houston 3-6 against the spread. Not very great. Totals. Detroit is 4-4. So nothing really great about that one. Outstanding. And Houston, their games have gone to the under by 7. 7 out of the 9 games have gone the under. So certainly want to take that into consideration as well. Houston just coming off a terrible loss, actually coming off extra rest, but a terrible loss to Jets. We'll see what they do. Detroit, again, another team making a quality move at the deadline, picked up defensive lineman and pass rusher Zadarius Smith from the Browns, which is just a great move for them. Look, it's kind of like a poor man's version of Von Miller. Von Miller was really exceptional. Zadarius Smith is really good, but he's a guy that can get you a sack in the playoffs, and that's what you're wanting him to do. But he's that guy, and that's why you got him. So pretty excited for them about that. But again, I'm going to beat my Jared Goff hype train drum again. Jared Goff has in the first halves of games, which is an interesting perspective. I mean, he's just completing about 89% of his throws, just unbelievable. Despite the rain, Jared Goff posted his 3rd straight completion percentage, over 80%. Again, has more TDs, 28, than incompletions, 24, since week 2. Just pretty pretty outstanding. I mean, it's just his 82.8% of his passes over the past 5 games. That's the most accurate stretch in league history, overtaking Hall of Famer Peyton Manning, 5-game spread of 80.2% in 2008. He's just not getting enough love. And one of the key players he loves hooking up with is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Since September, Jared Goff has thrown to him 30 times and has completed all 30 passes to Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, that's just outstanding. Speaks to the chemistry they have. One of the reasons why Detroit has such success, both of them putting in the work. That doesn't happen by accident. They built that chemistry over the offseason. While Aaron Rodgers was going to Egypt, these guys here were going to work and developing that chemistry, certainly paying off for the Lions. Just look like a juggernaut. And again, I just can't see them not getting to the Super Bowl.
Gotcha. So you think they'll get into the Super Bowl? Do you think they can win it?
I do.
Is this the year?
I think this is the year that Detroit wins the Super Bowl.
Man, I'd love to see it. It'd be fun. But it's
Detroit
Lions. It's hard to fathom Detroit in the Super Bowl, man.
Well, and they've got to get through Mahomes. To be the man, you got to beat the man. And I have a feeling that Kansas City's going to have a lot to say about that. But I think this is Detroit's year. Look, as long as they can continue like this, I mean, that offensive line, how Chris Jones disrupted Brock Purdy last year. I just can't see Chris Jones disrupting this offensive line unless they have an injury. They've had a little bit of injury early in the season with Frank Bragnow with a torn pectoral, but he's such a freaking animal. He came back, and it's just been outstanding for them as always. One of the best centers in the NFL. But this is the best line in the NFL, and this is as tough of a matchup for Kansas City as there is in the NFL.
Gotcha. All righty, let's wrap up with the last game, Monday Night Football. We've got Miami Dolphins at 2-6, heading to the LA Rams at 4-4.
Yeah, this is, again, we talked about it with San Francisco and Tampa Bay. It was must-win for both those teams, as it was for Cincinnati. We're getting into these must-win type scenarios. This is another must-win for both these teams. Miami, 2-6, you go 2-7, it's kind of done. And it might be done at 2-6, but the AFC is so weak that you can start to string some things together if you can. Unfortunately, they're meeting an LA Rams team that is just absolutely hot, especially in the last 3 games. LA Rams are getting healthy. I told people last week, I said, look, my team to take a flyer on right now in the Super Bowl is LA Rams, because as they're getting healthier, that defensive line is becoming a threat. Stafford is playing well the past 3 games. Look like they're starting to find some chemistry. Puka's getting, if we can keep Puka from punching people and not throwing out of the game. Of course, I really don't think he should have been thrown out for that, but neither here nor there. But, again, they're getting healthy. This is a team that's going to have to be reckoned with down the stretch. Again, this is a dome, so no weather. I've got the Rams at 3.5, and I've got a total at 46.
Gotcha. Rams -1 and total at 50.
50. What a game. 50 should be a heck of a deal. Miami on the side, they're 2-6 against the spread. The Rams are 3-5 against the spread. As far as the totals, Miami, 5 out of their 8 have gone under. The Rams, 4 out of their 7 have gone over. So really not a lot there, but should be interesting. I think I already know how I want to play this game, but we'll see. Look, I thought Tua looked a lot better last week against a division opponent that a lot of people didn't give him a chance to play against. But these divisional games, especially the second one's coming up, look a lot different than the first. It'll be interesting to see what that Baltimore-Cincinnati redo looks like in comparison. again. But look, as much as look, I think Miami's playing on will alone. I don't think they have just a tremendous roster, but I think the Rams story for me is the Rams. I think Jared Verse is just an absolute stud. He's certainly no Aaron Donald, but man, he is going to be a beast in the future and a cornerstone for that defense. The Rams, again, the first 5 games have averaged scoring about 17 points. The past 3 games, they've averaged scoring 25. So against that offense, it started kicking high gear. They did make one trade at deadline. They were sellers. They traded former Pro Bowl cornerback Tre'Davious White to Baltimore, who they certainly needed the help, and it'd be a good fresh start for him. But man, should be a good game. Any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, these teams are very similar in my opinion. Good receiving cores, pretty solid quarterback play, and they're both kind of underachieving this year by their standards. And
yep.
I honestly think whoever wins this game might sneak into the playoffs. Miami getting to 3-6 with such a weak division in the AFC. I mean, they could definitely get back into the swing of things, and same with the Rams. I mean, 5-4 in the NFC, it's well within range. So should be actually a really fun game to watch, and kind of excited to see the spread at -1. Should be a really close game.
Yeah, it should be an exciting Monday night game. Well, Matt, that's it for us. Any final words for the group? I mean, typically you don't really sign off. You kind of defer to me and Smooth Andy. So tonight, Matt, the floor is yours.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to this week. It's not an unbelievable week of matchups, but there's definitely some good stuff on the board. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think it's just trending towards Detroit, Kansas City. Those are the 2 top teams. And as a fan, I want to see Mahomes go against Dan Campbell and just that juggernaut Lions team. But also, don't count out Buffalo. I think they're playing pretty well. Allen's having a great season, and can't count out Baltimore, even though Lamar hasn't shown up in the playoffs in the past. They've got a pretty good squad, and Derrick Henry's a beast, and they went out and got Tre'Davious White. So I'm looking forward. We're getting close to the holiday season. I'm looking forward to your picks. I feel like you really start to hit at a very high rate of return when we get into the holiday season. So I'm also looking forward to that coming up.
Yeah, I've had a really good year this year, but November is typically my best year, and especially when we go to Thanksgiving weekend. For whatever reason, that weekend, I always am kind of one way or the other about it. But for whatever reason, those are typically my best picks of the entire year. So excited about Thanksgiving for a lot of reasons, but certainly for football as well. Just a great time. But look, for Matt, who hosts the show, but is also filling in for Smooth Andy tonight, and is my co-host tonight, or my contributor. I'm Uncle Phil. Please follow Smooth Andy at Smooth Andy 5. Follow me at Uncle Phil's Locks across all platforms, including YouTube. If you haven't subscribed there, please do. It would really help me out. But guys, thanks for spending your Wednesday night for us. Hopefully this was a little bit more relaxing after last night's craziness of the election. We're glad to focus on football now and get rid completely of political commercials. Guys, as always, have a great night. We'll see you. I'll probably put out a tweet tomorrow night for the Thursday night game. So follow me there on X, and we'll see you then. As always, guys, let's roll.